A very good morning. This is The Social Show, your one-stop shop for all things CSR as well as shared value. And I'm your host, Vivek Cholwana. As it said in the beginning of the show, it's exactly 9:30, and for the next 30 minutes, you can prepare to be edutained about all the things that are happening in this 9 billion rand industry. Did you know we've got a jam-packed show ahead of us? But before we get into that, I have to remind you that you can get a hold of us on a number of different platforms. This includes Twitter, Facebook, you can even call, or if you'd like, you can really just send me an email at press@social.tv, or you can go to brandlive.co.za and you can find out a little bit more about the show and ask me questions while we carry on with the content. You can also go to www.social-tv for our news and our latest initiatives that you can support, that you can volunteer in, and maybe donate to. But anyway, before we get too into what we're going to be talking about today, let me start off with the news. So far, 2 schools located in impoverished communities, namely Ocean View and Cleanbig Primary, will be receiving boreholes with solar pumps from Jacaranda FM's Project Waterdrop. At the end of last month, during the Super Rugby clash between the Vodacom Blue Bulls and the DHL Stormers, close to 30,000 people joined the radio station in a bid to raise much-needed funds for the project. The borehole installations come at an estimated minimum cost of approximately 50,000 rand per school, offering sustainable and cost-effective assistance to those who are in desperate need during the water crisis. The first borehole is scheduled to be drilled on Friday, the 22nd of June 2018. In other news, global initiatives and the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, will be hosting the second annual Responsible Business Forum on Sustainable Development Africa from the 25th to the 27th of June 2018. Under the theme Transforming Africa's Development Through Innovation, Youth and Technology, RBF Africa 2018 will bring together leaders from businesses, government, UN agencies and NGOs to focus on partnerships to accelerate the rate of development and address inequalities and find new ways to create fair and decent employment. After the positive response last year, RBF Africa 2018 will again bring about 400 delegates together to address their vision for an equitable and prosperous future in Africa. And lastly, in our news, the largest creative network for women, she says, has launched in Cape Town, rather. The world's largest creative network for women, she says, has launched on the 19th of April 2018. It's focused on the engagement and education and advancement of women creators. And it has a presence of over 42 cities around the world and is run by a volunteer network of women. Why a Cape Town chapter? Well, because they need more women at top, says the organizer Analda Grief, editor-in-chief of Eat Out. She also said that they need to have the backs of women all over the world, and they also want to give young creatives people to look up to. The first free event will be hosted by the Red and Yellow Creative School of Businesses on the 19th of April 2018, themed Forward to the Future. It will take the form of a panel discussion featuring dynamic women from advertising, media, marketing and other creative industries, sharing career and life hacks, action plans, tips on making your mark. There will also be a Q&A session followed by networking and drinks. So if you want to go there, and if you're in Cape Town and you have something to do, you don't have nothing to do that day, I suggest you go and pop in at the biggest creative network for women in Cape Town. Anyway, that concludes our news for the day. We're going to start the show off straight after this.
The world is becoming increasingly urban. We'll need to build a new city for 1 million people every week to keep up, or manage the growth of the cities we already have. The battle for sustainable development will be won or lost in our cities, working with the rural areas on which they depend for food and natural resources. Mayors and local governments are already taking action to win this battle. We provide basic services and work with slum dwellers and neighbourhoods to upgrade their living conditions. We improve air quality by investing in public transport and green mobility. We protect the environment through sustainable waste management. We tackle urban segregation by ensuring quality green and public spaces for all. We protect urban cultural heritage for future generations. We monitor and regulate land use to make cities more resilient to climate change and disasters. We involve our communities in planning for inclusive and sustainable urbanization. Local and regional governments seek strong partnerships with national governments to ensure enabling legal frameworks and adequate resources, and play our full role in achieving Sustainable Development Goal 11, which is Sustainable Cities and Communities. The Sustainable Development Agenda depends on local governments. The jobs and economy of the future will be urban. By 2030, 60% of the global population will live in cities. To ensure decent work and economic growth, local leaders face many challenges. 40 million jobs need to be created every year for young people entering the labour market. Depending on the developing region, between 45 and 90% of workers are in the informal economy. There are 168 million children in child labour worldwide. Women's average wages are between 4 to 36% less than men's. Many local governments are already taking action, fostering community participation and social dialogue between employers and workers, including in the informal economy, adapting and responding to economic trends and challenges, promoting entrepreneurship, job-oriented policies, innovation and labour protection, and learning from one another through city-to-city cooperation. Local and regional governments do all this to ensure inclusive and sustainable economic growth, employment, and decent work for all, which is Goal 8 of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Achieving SDG 8 depends on local governments.
My name is Andrew Lowndes. I'm the UK and Ireland Sales Manager for Presslit Care. At Presslit Care, we're very passionate about providing access for people with physical disabilities. We're very passionate about the Changing Places campaign that provide larger accessible toilet and changing facilities. It's fantastic when we can see the smile on the faces of users. That's our reward, is to see the satisfaction and the enjoyment that people have.
You back on the social show, and if you missed out on the first few minutes of the show, you just missed out on the news. But we'll have a few of those highlights on the Brand Live site, brandlive.co.za, or you can just go on the Facebook page, or you could just go on socialtv.co.za, where you'll get the latest news, the latest updates, and all things to do with CSI, and really all things to do with helping each other, collaborations, and making sure that we do fulfill our promises to civil society and people and children at large in South Africa. And today I actually wanted to talk about something that I honestly don't really have an answer for, and perhaps I should have gotten somebody who would speak a little bit more, but it's very difficult to find that person as well. And today we're going to be talking about funding. One of the biggest issues that a lot of NGOs have is the idea or the concept that how do they then get funding? How do they get people to support their causes? How do they speak to people in a way that allows or just opens their mind and makes them understand that they need some sort of help. They need either I know there's volunteering, which is a great option because it just helps with the workload and the labor. But funding is quite it's a very important part of CSI. It's a very important part of making sure that the NGO sector as well as the government sector are able to collaborate, because the government, what it does have usually is the resources, and the NGOs usually have the people, the heart of the people. So it's always a really great relationship to see when it happens. But I know that for a fact that NGOs often get lost when they have to start planning to raise funds for their projects and their programs. As soon as one project ends, they quickly need to look around for more funding to sustain their work. But funding may not be immediately available for them to grab it. Besides, with so much competition, I know so many NGOs around education, around health, around all these specific things that needs, where you like, which one can I really give to? If you could give to all of them. It's not easy enough to get a hold of a desired support from donors all the time in order to counter such a situation. It's important that the NGOs have a strategy, fundraising strategy that is always kept on the back burner by NGOs because they lack the skills to develop it. I know for a fact that when you're an NGO, the last thing you're really thinking about is, okay, so how do I strategically make more money? You're just thinking about how many people I can help. And as good as that is, and as good as that mantra is, it can't go alone. It can't just move on its own. It's not like it can't operate in a silo. What you want to do needs funds, and what you need, so you need to have really great backbone of how to fundraise and a fundraising strategy. There are a number of ways in which NGOs can sort of identify different types of resources for raising support. There's different tools that your NGO needs to, for fundraising. There's also tapping into potential donor agencies and other areas of support, and also what we know of as a resource mobilization, which is another way in which you can be strategic in the way in which you raise funds as an NGO. Today, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the tools your NGOs may need for fundraising, because I think it's quite important that we use these tools and we find out new ways of making money alternatively. So after you've sort of developed your resource mobilization plan and assigned roles for tapping resources from various sources, you need sort of to prepare your tools, or in other words, your marketing material. And a lot of people have said that what I've seen now in a trend, and it's not really a new trend, it's something that has been happening for a while, where a lot of companies will give their money to NGOs, but in the vein of saying that they really believe that it's good for their PR, it's good for their how they sort of see and how they sort of understand their brand. So obviously you're not going to sort of seek funding from donor agencies without a proposal, and you'll not organize fundraising events without your information brochure ready, or some sort of pamphlet that you can give people, or a website at least, so they can read more about what you do and how you do it. So what are the promotional materials required to carry out the resource mobilization process? Now, first of all, you need an organizational profile. You need something that's going to be have basic information, as I said, about the name of your organization, the contact address, the contact person, objectives, vision, and working areas. And I know it kind of is a schlep, because when you think about admin, you think of NGOs, you think, oh my word, it must be a mess. But if you sort this out before you ask, or you ask for your information brochure, you ask for your funding, you're able to then come from a point of reference, and the person who's giving you whatever funds is able to be a little bit more informed about you. I like the idea of a brochure or pamphlets, but I'm also into the idea of just going digital with it, creating a really fun way of showing your message and showing how it's going to help people. Now we've got infographics, we've got editing software on our phones that we can download, and apps and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's very important that as NGO sector does not falter behind because of their sort of traditional ways of marketing. You need to start looking at how these big businesses are marketing their businesses, and sort of look at your NGO in the same light. You also need an annual report. Now, I always believe in monitoring and evaluation, because I think it does sort of attract funders. If you have an NGO for a week, even if it's for a month, have sort of something that's tracking you down, that says, okay, so I have impacted this many people, this is how much it costs, and this is our annual turnover, this is what it was, whatever the case may be. Have a tracking record where people can see your progress, see your problems, and be able to see where they can fit in. Because a lot of the time we just say it's funding. I've heard so many NGOs talk about funding. They're unable to pay their employees, they're unable to pay themselves, but they carry on. But the biggest issue then becomes, how are you using your money? What are the donations actually doing? Because you also need donations to carry out your projects, right? But you also need donations to just solidify and make sure that your admin processes, that your how you function as an NGO is it works, and it makes it's sustainable. And I think it's very important that you sort of do that. I think so. You have your report, you have your brochure, you have your profile, you have a fact sheet. Now, a fact sheet is also very great, because what it does, it makes things a little bit easier for you to to get your message across. People really enjoy facts. People love statistics. People love numbers. So if you can incorporate those things into your brochure and into your proposal, I think you're A for a way. There's a number of ways in which you can just make sure that your NGO is a little bit more visible. Now you've got, as I said, social media, which is one of the biggest marketing tools you could have. You have celebrities, you have people that are interested in specific things that can help you get the feet into your organization. Once you get the feet, you can then ask, or you can have a bigger or a larger pool for you to seek donations and to seek specific causes that you love. Now, new ways, there are always new ways for non-profits to raise revenue, and they spring into existence every year depending on the technology, depending on the things that come out of the country, depending on a lot of different aspects. But sources for those funds are pretty much the same, unfortunately. Even though there are definitely different ways in raising capital, the sources and the people who are giving the capital are always the same people. So you're speaking to the same people that are being pitched by 5 other NGOs. There's something you need to be cognizant about when you are pitching to a company or even to the government about getting you funds. You need to be cognizant about the fact that so many other NGOs that are so eager and have been knocking on that same door to get that funding. So you need to be a little bit different, a little bit more strategic, but more than that, you need to be a little bit more alternative in how you knock. You need to something about you has to spring out, and it all works together when you have sort of a strategy around funding, a strategy around reach, and a strategy around your goals and where you're going. So what makes up a healthy mix of income sources? I definitely think that more than anything, there is an opportunity for you as an entrepreneur, an NGO or social entrepreneur, to understand that there's different sources of income. You don't have to go just to one. You don't have to have a big donor and not understand that there's so many other ways in which you can make money, right? So even though we automatically think of donations when we think of nonprofits, in reality, much of the income for charitable sector comes from fees for service and the sale of products. I was actually at the launch of Slipper Day, which is it's a big initiative by Reach for a Dream, which is a global NGO that helps kids dreams come true. And they were launching with Wimpy, alongside Wimpy, their Slipper Day campaign. So what they're doing is that they are going to be, selling the slippers, as well as selling wristbands for people who have to get a free coffee or free tea at Wimpy. It's only 10 rand per band, the wristband that you buy. It's 10 rand, you buy that and you get your slippers. And I think this is exactly what fees for services means. It means as much as we do want to get a donation for the work that you do, you also need to have another revenue that allows you to sell, allows you to get people to buy into something so they can get something back. Also, there's a really great program called the GEM Project where they actually reward you for volunteering. And I think that's also exactly what fees for services may mean. It means that people always want to feel like they did something, and whether it's 5 rand airtime, whether it is buying a wristband for 10 rand, it's very, very important that you have some sort of sale of product, you have some sort of identity that affiliates people with you that they can take home with them, something they can remember you by and say, oh wait, I remember I got the slippers for Slipper Day. I wonder where Slipper Day is. Oh, I love my coffee from Wimpy. I wonder where Slipper Day is. Or, oh my word, I got about 20 rand airtime for just picking up some litter in a disadvantaged area. I need it makes you remember the NGO, and it makes you more open to selling and I mean to making more money. And again, donors will look at that. Donors will look at who's talking about your product, why are they talking about your product, and also how can they help. And usually that's a great way to raise money. Another way to raise money is charitable contributions. Now, although the total income for nonprofits comes from an assortment of resources, as I said before, of contributors, but in part individuals are the largest source of charitable donations for non-profit organizations. Now, according to Giving USA, total charitable giving in the US, I'm speaking about the US alone, reached more than over 300 billion, in 2015. Of that amount, 71% came from individuals. Now, I know that you've probably seen or heard of people who are doing these crowdfunding campaigns where you go online and they say, okay, this is what's going on. We asking for just normal South Africans, people from all over the world, or not even South Africans, people all over the world, to just bid and give a little bit of money to this sort of whatever it is, whether it's an NGO, whether it is someone needs to go somewhere for studying and doesn't have the funds, whatever the case may be. I think that's one of the ways in which we've seen the power of the individual, the power of just people in their own homes, in their own spaces, giving 5 rand, giving 10 rand, giving 20 rand into a crowdfunding platform, and really raising money to not only help kids who are suffering from different illnesses, but to also just support a cause that they really find true. And we all have been affected by different things, whether it be HIV, whether it be cancer, whether it be disability, whether it be unemployment, whatever it is that you know and you've gone through and you understand. People are really willing and sympathetic and really empathize with that, with those kind of charities. So don't also forget that there's individual where people just come on and they pledge and they give enough, as much as they can, in whatever you're trying to give. And lastly, I think we can also talk about corporate philanthropy, and I guess that's what the show is about. This is what CSI is about. This is what social show is about. It's about understanding the integral part of the kind of role that corporations play in funding. Corporate social responsibility has become more important as consumers have become more likely to buy from more socially responsible companies. We've spoken about this a million times. You've got corporate funding, which can be a long-term commitment, which I like. I know that a lot of the time when a corporate really likes an NGO or likes what they stand for, they will always make sure that they have a 3-year contract or a 5-year contract, and that's what you're going to be looking for. 3-year, 4-year contracts with a big corporate that's going to make sure that your maybe 2 or 3 of your projects are well funded and are well taken care of from an administration perspective, so you can pay people that are working, but also from a perspective that says, okay, how many more people can we reach? So it's very important that you look at that, and when you are pitching to your potential investor, you also show them your long-term goals, your sustainable goals, so that they can look into the future, because remember, they always want to be affiliated with something that's good. And lastly, I think there's so many ways in which you can do it, but I think another one, just to finish off the show, is basically looking at local governments, looking at what governments are willing and able to do. I know that our President now, Cyril Ramaphosa, has spoken a lot about making sure that there's the NGO sector, the sector that needs the most, the CSI sector, is supported by the government. Many nonprofits benefit from all levels of government. Prominent examples are public education, higher education, and public media. And all of the time, education has been on the forefront when it comes to funding, from schools, building schools, making the digital revolution that's coming up now, just getting books to different spaces, just making sure that people have food and eat when they're school, not people, I mean children. So education has been a very large focus in South Africa at the moment, and I think it's quite large in other countries. But you can let me know what you think your province, what your state really needs and really supports. So government funds many programs provided by nonprofits, especially if it has human service or healthcare. Again, if you think about Trilog last year and the year before and the year before that, you find that the top 2 most funded sectors in South Africa at the moment is in health and is in education. So that's something to look at when you are starting or thinking about looking at funding. Look at how it's going to educate the masses, and also look at how it's going to help save lives. If those 2 things are in your project in any way, with it, and I don't mean saving lives in the medical term, but I mean saving lives in terms of just getting people out of poverty, getting people into different homes and places to where they feel safe. So it's very important that we look at it like that. But I wonder how many of you had luck. Which one works for you the best? I think all 3 you need. You need support from government. You need support from corporates. You need to also be able to have a fees of service of some point, something that people can buy, whether it's a t-shirt or a slipper, as I said before. And you also need to make sure that you are you focus on individuals. There's a lot of individual people in and around South Africa, in and around the world, who are interested in funding your project. I know it's very difficult, but it is probably the best thing that you can do for yourself, is have several flows of income coming into you, and you're trying to win them in all different ways. And that concludes our show for today. It's been a great comeback. It's April now. I'm very excited about the year. It's going to be very fruitful. And I hope if you have any other ways in which people can fund, I know there's a lot of different apps and a lot of different technological advances that have come out that are going to help get the funding to be a little bit more easier to get, more streamlined, more easier for the person on the other side, for the individual. So look at that stuff. But also remember, you have to knock differently. You have to have a different thing about you that really does help, that really, really, really speaks to changing narratives and changing the current situation for those who are disadvantaged. Yes, okay, I'm done talking. I'm sure you're all tired of my voice. We'll be back again on The Social Show tomorrow at same time, same place. We didn't have time for things to remember, but remember, we'll have it again tomorrow. Don't worry. And that concludes our show. We'll be back soon.
What is individual social responsibility? Social responsibility is about me, you, and us. It is about our action, how we affect people, the community, and the environment around us. What if we all accepted responsibility for the challenges that our communities face? What if we challenged ourselves to create positive impact with every action we take? Just like businesses focus on corporate social responsibility, JCI members are challenged to focus on individual social responsibility. We all have rights as citizens, but we also have responsibilities. The JCI Active Citizen Framework is a social plan that serves as a roadmap to sustainable development. That is what social responsibility is about. It is about me, you, and all of us taking responsibility for the future of our world, starting from our local community,